This year is over, so it's time for my best of 2023 video. I've done a video like this every year since 2019, where I show off the top 20 Mandela Effects I've covered this year, as well as go over a bunch of really cool stats and details. As always, timestamps are in the description if you want to skip around. I know this stuff isn't interesting to everyone, but it is to some, so let's get into it. To kick things off, this channel has gained 53,000 new subscribers this year, and even crossed the insane number of 300,000 total subscribers. 300,000! To me, that's an inconceivable number. I remember when I was stuck at around 8,000 subscribers for nearly 2 years, and here we are. The gratitude I have for all of you is immeasurable. Thank you. Next up is watch time for this channel. It's 1.1 million hours. 1.1 million hours watched. That's over 5 years worth of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, non-stop viewing. Absolutely incredible. You all are the best. My channel has received a total of 9.4 million views this year, my best ever. The average view time on this channel in 2023 was 11 minutes and 59 seconds. Now let's check out individual videos. My most viewed video this year was my video game Mandela Effects video with 951,000 views, making it my fourth most viewed video of all time. Just look at how close that is to a million. Now, my most viewed short this year was Glitches in the Matrix. This 1-minute original short got a ridiculous 4.7 million views. I don't even know what to say. How? Why? I don't know, but I'm glad so many people watched it. My lowest viewed video this year was my Telemarketer Claims to be Human, with around 21,000 views. I get it, the topic, the name, the art, it's all very weird, very strange, but that's kind of what I was going for, this weird uncanny valley feel. It might not be the biggest attention grabber on YouTube, but I'm just as proud of that video as I am of any other, so go check it out if you want to see my worst of the year. Anyway, that's enough stats for now, let's get into some Mandela effects. Put simply, a Mandela effect is an unsettling phenomenon where a large group of people remember something differently than it is now. Now that you're up to speed, let's check out the top 20 Mandela effects I've covered this year. Enjoy. Let's start with Skryim. That's right, the Elder Scrolls V Skryim. Remember a few years back, there was that meme going around with the arrow and the knee? Well, what is actually said in-game? Is it, I used to be an adventurer like you, and then I took an arrow to the knee? Or was it, I used to be an adventurer like you, then I took an arrow in the knee? Many people online remember arrow to the knee, but now that isn't correct. It's actually arrow in the knee, and apparently it always has been.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
It's a subtle change, as they often are, but still one that makes you feel weird if you played a lot of Skyrim. So which one do you remember? Let's talk about some Bible Mandela effects. Let's start small and build up to the bigger effects. Do you remember the story of the 3 wise men that went to see Jesus when he was born? Well, the Bible doesn't actually say 3. In fact, it doesn't give a number at all. Where the number 3 came from is anyone's guess. Ancient scholars speculate that if it happened, it was actually between 2 and up to 11 wise men. How about that? Is that what you remember? Or how about this? Here are some phrases that people have attributed to the Bible. Let me know if you remember any of these. God never gives you more than you can handle. When God closes a door, he opens a window. God helps those who help themselves. Nobody's perfect, or everyone makes mistakes. Hate the sin, love the sinner. And finally, spare the rod, spoil the child. Absolutely none of these are from the Bible, and none of them are mentioned in the Bible. At least, not currently. So where did these come from, and why do people attribute them to the Bible? Well, that's a new mystery entirely. Next up, let's talk about dragons. Everybody knows the Bible mentions dragons a total of 35 times, right? And we are just talking about Revelations. Dragons are mentioned 21 times in the Old Testament, and 14 times in the New Testament. And that's not all. Unicorns are mentioned 9 times in the Bible, and the word matrix is used 5 times. Is this what you remember? Next up, let's talk about the Mamas and the Papas 1965 hit, California Dreaming. Which of these is the correct line from the song? I began to pray, or I pretend to pray? Well, as it turns out, to the disbelief of many online, it has always been pretend to pray, not I began to pray. Is that what you remember? Next up is Billy Joel's 1973 classic song, Piano Man. Which do you remember? a memory, a melody. Apparently many believe that the lyric is melody, but it's actually memory. Which one did you recall? Here's a fun one that's been freaking people out. Think back to the 1995 song, Who Will Save Your Soul by Jewel. Every time she says soul in the song, does she say soul or souls? The obvious answer is soul, and that this was simply me testing you and keeping you on your toes. Except not. She actually never says soul in the song. She says souls every single time. Tell me, is that what you remember? The last smaller effect I want to talk about before getting into the bigger topics is the song Boom Boom Pow by Black Eyed Peas. What is the correct lyric? I'm so 3008, you so 2000 and late. Or, I'm so 2008, you so 2000 and late. The lyric is, I'm so 3008, you so 2000 and late. Babe is the main character of the Babe and Babe Pig in the City movies. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to visualize Babe the Pig in your mind and ask yourself this. Do you remember the pig having a head of hair? I'm sure most of you said no. So tell me, does this look exactly how you remember this lovable pig? Once this was noticed online, every comment essentially boiled down to, no, no way, absolutely not. And I can see why. It's weird and jarring. Why does Babe have hair like this? It's just so strange looking now. It's as if they dyed the hair on Babe's head and brushed it. Is it a wig? Is it real? Has it always been there? Next up is the Pokemon Psyduck and its evolution Golduck. What type of Pokemon are they? Are they water? Or are they water and psychic? This one came as a shock to many, but Psyduck and Golduck have never actually been psychic Pokemon, despite them being psychic ducks, and being able to use the moves Psybeam, Psyshock, Psychic, and many others. What do you remember? Continuing with Pokemon, remember this stone Pokemon Onix? How is its name spelled? Onix. This certainly isn't the only Pokemon spelling Mandela effect, but it is the most popular of all of them. For some reason, Onix has just messed up a lot of people. What do you remember? Let's jump across the pond to the United Kingdom. People always ask me for more foreign Mandela effects, which is typically hard to do because the verification process is that much harder. I don't have people I can just ask. But in this case, the evidence is overwhelming. So let's talk about potato chips, or as they like to call them, crisps. Specifically, Walker's Crisps. There is a long-established brand of chips over there called Walker's Crisps. Specifically, a salt and vinegar variation in a green package and a cheese and onion variation in a blue package. That's how they are sold to this day, but the vast majority of people believe those colors and flavors switched around. What so many seem to remember is salt and vinegar in blue and cheese and onion in green. It sounds weird at first, but this has become a pretty big deal. This would be the American equivalent of the Doritos red and blue bags switching flavors and colors. It's totally strange and obviously wrong. Not only that, there are countless personal experiences of people talking about these chips and the color switch. Here's some examples. And no, I'm not going to use a British accent. Used to buy the blue salt and vinegar's Walkers religiously because salt and vinegar is my jam. One day I opened up a blue pack, took a bite, and it was cheese and onion. 44 years old from the UK. I too vividly remember this color swap. This is beyond freaky. I have a specific memory of buying a pack of Walker's Crisps in a vending machine as a youngster, and without thinking, I picked the green ones as I love cheese and onion. I was devastated when I got salt and vinegar. The quotes go on and on and on. People remember these colors being flipped. So what does the company behind them say? Couldn't it simply be that the colors were flipped at one point and that's the explanation? Case closed? Well, Vice did an entire article on this crazy mystery called The Walker's Crisps Conspiracy that has people convinced we're in an alternate reality. That's a mouthful of a title, geez. In this article, they delve deep into the mystery and show off this incredible gaslighting FAQ section of the Walker's website. Question: why did you change your packaging for salt and vinegar and cheese and onion so they're in the wrong colors? Answer: contrary to popular belief, Walker's cheese and onion have always been in blue packets, and salt and vinegar have always been in green packets. We don't have a plan to change this, as it's signature to our brand. Undeterred by this response, the writer of this article actually tracked down a longtime Walker's representative. And this representative actually remembers there being a switch, but can't remember when it was, and can't find anything about it, just like everyone else. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Even the chip representative remembers them switching, but the company denies it? So then people turn to Google and other search engines, and guess what? There's no evidence of the color switch. Tons of people talking about it online, but no proof or residue. The author of this article even reached out to Google, and Google denies ever changing or deleting anything relating to Walker's crisps. There have even been multiple polls done regarding these chips, and like I said earlier, the majority of people believe a switch happened. But Walker's Crisps denies it, and there is no evidence that it ever happened outside of the thousands and thousands of recorded memories. What do you think? Who designed the first American flag? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Was it Betsy Ross? Growing up, you probably learned that Elizabeth Betsy Ross designed and made the first American flag back in 1776, which was adopted by Congress the very next year, the classic red and white striped flag with 13 stars. But here I am to tell you that no, there is in fact no evidence that she had anything to do with the first American flag. Nothing. She didn't design it, she didn't make it, she didn't stitch it, nothing. Mark Leepson, an American journalist and historian, stated in an interview, "As far as the big question is concerned, did she make the first American flag? Every historical study has come to show the same conclusion. There's no good historical evidence that she did. Most historians believe the story is apocryphal, as in doubtful and lacking authenticity. It's widely circulated as being true, but simply isn't. Credit for the first flag goes to Francis Hopkinson, and just wait until you hear about him. This man is going to make you feel beyond insignificant, so prepare yourself." Francis Hopkinson was an American founding father, a college graduate, a lawyer, a jurist, an author and poet, a composer, a delegate of New Jersey. He designed continental paper money, as well as early flags for the Navy and the United States. Talk about accomplished. So what do you think? Is this the history you remember, or has something changed? Let's talk about Japan. Here is an absolutely insane Mandela effect for you. Japan has just discovered 7,000 new unknown islands. Yes, 7,000 new islands that have seemingly come into existence out of nowhere. You heard me correctly, 7,000 new islands. Apparently back in 1987, the Japanese Coast Guard counted up the total islands of Japan. The way the islands were counted was that each had to have a circumference of at least 100 meters, so about 328 feet. The grand total tallied up to 6,852 islands, meaning Japan had less than 7,000 islands. But now, all of those, plus another extra 7,000 islands they just never noticed before, meaning the total amount of islands making up Japan has more than doubled. Now, I'm sure some of these islands might not have previously been counted, or perhaps errors occurred, but 7,000 new ones? 7,000 brand new undiscovered islands? That's just beyond belief. How is that even possible? Continuing on our journey through history and its seemingly ever-changing self, next up we have werewolf trials. That's right, over 200 years before the Salem witch trials in America, Europe was having werewolf trials. I asked every single friend I knew about this, and not a single one of them had any idea this was a thing. So I went online, and guess what? Same exact thing. So now I'm throwing it out there for all of you to comment and respond on. To start, obviously there aren't werewolves. But that didn't stop humans from falsely accusing, kidnapping, torturing, and killing other humans because they thought they were werewolves. I'm so glad that hundreds of years later, we don't just single out people today for being different and try to eradicate them and their beliefs. Oh. These trials took place throughout the 15th, 16th, and 17th century. And here's a cause you've probably never heard of before. These trials and horrific life-ending punishments were driven by superstition, religion, politics, and the desire to find scapegoats for the harsh conditions of their time. Sound familiar? Many of the accused were beggars, hermits, foreigners, immigrants, and people that were simply different. Absolutely horrifying stuff, and it's terrifying to me that we still have the same thing going on today. But instead of werewolves, it's fill in the blank. On a much lighter and less political note, let's talk about toilets. Flushing toilets to be exact. When was the first flushing toilet created? History tells us that the first modern flushable toilet is credited to Sir John Harington, an Englishman in 1596. That's 427 years ago. Now, previous to this, there existed ancient toilets, but they simply utilized running water and not a flush. Just imagine a stream of water underneath you. That's basically the idea. But here we go again. History has changed once more. Archaeologists have discovered a flush toilet in China. The mind-blowing part is that it doesn't just beat the 427-year record. It blows it out of the water, pun intended. This flush toilet is 2,400 years old. Absolutely amazing stuff. What about electric cars? This seems like a new enough concept. Well, what if I told you that it's actually really, really old? In fact, the first electric car debuted all the way back in 1890 in the United States. Not only that, apparently electric cars from a bunch of different automakers popped up all across the country. New York City even had an entire fleet of 60 electric taxis. By the year 1900, electric cars accounted for 1/3 of all vehicles on the road in the United States. And over the next 10 years, the sales of electric cars kept growing. This definitely sounds like the history you learned growing up, right? Electricity didn't have all the issues that steam or gas cars did. They were easy to drive with no smelly pollutant. Apparently, the electric car over 100 years ago was extremely popular and even led to the first hybrid car. That's right, both gas and electric back in 1899. 1899 was the first hybrid electric gasoline-powered car. To blow your mind even more, even Edison believed that electric cars were the superior technology. But what if I told you that history was a little different now? It was ultimately Henry Ford's mass-produced cheaper Model T car that seemingly killed the electric car. And thus the considerably more toxic and inefficient gas-powered cars became the standard. It all came down to price. The word smallpox probably doesn't mean much to younger people today. It's an old disease that was completely eradicated by 1980, thanks to a vaccine created in 1796. But did you know that it was one of the deadliest viruses to ever spread throughout humanity? Over 500 million recorded deaths, and that's since we've been record keeping. It's probably considerably more than that. In fact, one epidemic in Japan between 735 and 737 was believed to have killed off an entire third of their population. Smallpox is no joke. They speculate that smallpox first made the jump to humans over 3,000 years ago, as there are even Egyptian mummies who died of smallpox. But as history and the Mandela Effect go, obviously something has to change. As I mentioned earlier, the smallpox vaccine was created in 1796. Except now it was being used 30 plus years earlier when George Washington and Congress carried out a mass vaccination campaign in the Continental Army that reduced the mortality from smallpox to less than 2%. From what was 50%. Let's say 2 people got it, 1 person was pretty much guaranteed to die, to now being 50 people could get it and only 1 person would die. It was this overwhelming massive success that somehow the history books forgot to mention until now. And get this, inoculations and vaccines for smallpox date back somehow even further than that. Examples range from the early 1700s all the way back to the 1500s in China. I'd like to assume that everyone in the US knows of the Energizer Bunny. The pink bunny mascot with a drum powered by Energizer batteries that keep going and going. This thing has been around for decades, and that's the battery bunny. Always has been, always will be. But what if I told you that the Energizer Bunny isn't actually the only battery bunny? That Duracell, Energizer's main competitor, actually has a pink bunny powered by a battery mascot as well. And get this, that bunny was created first and has been around longer than Energizer's bunny. When I first read about this, my jaw dropped. I started digging deeper into this, and it's all true. And a lot of people online are freaking out about it. Apparently Duracell created their pink bunny first in 1973, but by 1988 their trademark lapsed, so Energizer swooped in and created a parody of that pink bunny. This led to legal issues, courtroom drama, and eventually, in a settlement, Energizer got the rights to this bunny in the US and Canada, while Duracell got their rights to everywhere else in the world. Then, get this, apparently Duracell's pink bunny started creeping back into the US in 2016. More courtroom drama ensued, and now we randomly have 2 battery companies with a pink bunny mascot. What? Okay, why not? Why not? So what do you remember? Did Duracell always have a pink bunny mascot? Or is this completely new information to you? I've seen a ton of people online completely confused about this, and a few people who remember the bunny. So where do you stand? One could certainly try to make the case that the Duracell bunny wasn't around very long in the US, so maybe that's why so many people don't remember it. But then again, the pink Duracell bunny was used in the US for a total of 23 years. 23 years! That is a ridiculously long time to be used in marketing for how little brand recognition there actually is for it. I don't know about you, but I find this potential Mandela effect absolutely fascinating. So please, tell me what you remember. I want to hear it in the comments below. Remember the movie Spider-Man 2, where Spider-Man stops a train from derailing and crashing using every ounce of strength in his body? All of this happened after an incredible battle with Doc Ock. Spider-Man was exhausted, beaten down, and completely worn out, but he gave it his all and he saved the people on that train. Then those same people saved the collapsing Spider-Man. The people that saved him slowly pulled him inside to safety. They all carried him above their heads and then laid him down. Someone saying, "Careful, he's a hero." Someone else chimes in, "He's just a kid, no older than my son." It's an amazing moment where Spider-Man wakes up to everyone staring at him. He realizes his mask is gone and everyone knows what his face looks like, but everyone promises to keep it a secret. It's just, chef's kiss. That's a superhero moment right there. This is what makes those kinds of movies so good. So besides reminiscing about this incredible movie, something I just said didn't actually happen, and that's the new Mandela effect I'm discussing today. Despite what a lot of people remember, myself included, the line, "Careful, he's a hero," was never said in Spider-Man 2. It simply doesn't exist. The line where someone says, "Careful, he's a hero," is now replaced with, "Nice and easy, mumble, mumble, slower gently." It's actually really strange sounding compared to the rest of the dialogue during the scene. It sounds like dialogue added after the fact in post-production. Like the original line was removed and replaced with this, whatever this mumbly line is.
Nice and easy to go down. Slower, gently.
I had to remove the music and background noise just to hear what the current line actually is. Listen for yourself.
Nice and easy to go down. Slower, gently.
It's something like "nice and easy when you go down," or "nice and easily you go down." You can barely understand it, and that's not what I remember. I even looked up the script, and none of the dialogue is in it. It just vaguely describes what happens. I got really into this mystery when I first heard of it because I can quote most of this movie. That's how much I've watched Spider-Man 2. So I started digging. It's not in Spider-Man 2. It's not in the slightly longer version of Spider-Man 2.1 or Spider-Man 3. So what happened to this line? Eventually I found something on a website that catalogs memes. One of those memes is this: "Carefully, he's a hero." This meme started around 2017, while the original movie came out in 2004. Now, here's the weird thing. I've never seen these memes before, but the line is near identical to what I remember. Mine being "Careful, he's a hero," and the meme being "Carefully, he's a hero." The fact we both came to a near identical remembrance of this line is pretty stunning, meaning either it's a complete coincidence, as in both of our minds came to the same false memory, or maybe it was a line in one version of Spider-Man 2 that doesn't exist anymore and can't be found, or it's a Mandela effect of something that used to exist that a bunch of people remember but doesn't anymore. Stuff like this just makes me scratch my head. What do you remember? Does this line sound familiar to you? Have you ever seen these memes before? Let me know what you remember. So this next Mandela effect is completely out of my expertise, but there are hundreds online who believe it's changed, so I'm going to trust them. Up next is Art Pop, the third studio album by Lady Gaga. Released in 2013, this album went on to sell millions and millions of copies. So what's the Mandela effect? Apparently, something on the album art has changed. While researching this, I found dozens of people that said it's always been there, and hundreds of people that said it's never been there. So what am I talking about? Well, apparently, the artwork for Art Pop now has a white star on it. Just a strange, random white star seemingly placed arbitrarily. To me personally, the star doesn't especially pop out, and it isn't super noticeable or meaningful in this piece of art. So let's dig deeper as to why it's there. After searching a while, I found a photo of her album art without text on it, and you can see that the white star is still there. So maybe if we look into the slices of the art that makes up this piece of art, we can find what it's covering up, or where it came from. As it turns out, the art the star resides on is a piece called The Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli, painted between 1482 and 1485. Upon looking at the original, it shows that there is no white star. Nothing. I thought maybe it was covering up something, but nope, it's just a random white star placed on top of some hair. So it makes me wonder, does this add credence to the idea that this star wasn't originally there? Possibly. If you look at the Art Pop artwork, there's literally no reason for the star to be there. It's just randomly stamped there. Maybe it was somehow retroactively added in, or maybe it's always been there from the start. I'll let you decide. Here's a weird movie Mandela effect about a scene that is very different than most remember. Think back to the Spongebob Squarepants movie from 2004. During the song I'm a Goofy Goober, Spongebob can be seen playing a guitar. Now, if you were a fan of this movie growing up, what does that guitar look like? A lot of people have very similar memories of this one that are now completely incorrect. The most commonly said memory of this guitar is that it is white, V-shaped, and has a double neck. This is the general consensus online. Unfortunately though, all of those details are wrong. The guitar actually looks like a peanut with a GG at the end of its head. This one has been freaking out SpongeBob fans for years. Is this what you remember? Let's talk about a classic guitar brand founded in 1890 that is known all over the world. How is it spelled? Squire or Squire? Anyone out there who has owned a guitar or a first-time amp has seen this before. So what do you remember? Both sound the same, but it turns out that the spelling of Squire is actually this one. That's the correct spelling. This Mandela effect has been extremely popular lately, as it's affected so many people online. Are you one of those affected? Or have you always known that Squire was spelled like this? I've tested this on a bunch of different friends, and every single one of them has gotten it wrong, which is pretty rare for a Mandela effect. Usually it'll be 40-60 or 60-40, sometimes 50-50. But this one, from what I've seen online, as well as everyone I've talked to, I'm clocking at 100% for this one, which is pretty compelling. So I'd love to hear what you think. Well, what about the former science fiction turned science fact concept of video phones? You know, it's a phone call, but you can see the other person on the other side of the phone. Now we have FaceTime, Skype, and other similar apps, but for the longest time, this was the future. I used to think, oh man, when this is real, we'll know we've made it, because we're living in the future. But now that we have it, no one really wants to do it, because who wants to get showered and cleaned up for a phone call? Just text me. In the 1960s, Bell System, later renamed AT&T, showed off their picture phone as a prototype at the New York City World's Fair.
Good morning, John. You're looking well this morning. I'm very pleased and proud, John, to participate with you this morning in this historic call.
But that wasn't the first showing of this technology. Even though at the time, this was shown off as a brand new thing never before seen or realized. What if I told you that video phones existed, and not just in concept, but actually existed and were publicly used 87 years ago? Go ahead, take a moment to take that in. 87 years ago. Germany, 1936. The world's first two-way video phone service launched. This unbelievable historical achievement that seemingly spawned into existence was so far ahead of its time. Get this, it connected to a range of 100 miles to multiple cities in Germany and was open to the public. It ran at 25 frames per second on a CRT display at a resolution of 172 rows, which equated to about 40,000 pixels. It was said to be so detailed that you could read the hands on a wristwatch. 3-minute phone calls were priced at about 1/15 of the average German's weekly wage. Each city had a few booths, and all you had to do was make an appointment ahead of time at the post office. Then World War II came around, and their plans to extend the network were abandoned for obvious reasons. By 1940, the entire system was shut down. Let's check out some more potential Mandela effect examples. We all hopefully know of the space race between what is modern-day Russia and the United States of America from back in the 1960s. Perhaps you've heard about Operation Paperclip from the 1940s to the 1950s, a plan to take former Nazi scientists, technicians, and engineers and put them to work for the US government. That's actually where NASA came from. Take the brightest minds of your enemies and make them work for you. Many people would probably recognize the scientifically valuable work of Wernher von Braun, the man who is credited as the father of space travel and the father of rocket science. He invented the V2 rockets and is largely credited for rocket science. So are you ready for the Mandela Effect? No, you aren't. No one is. Enter the CBU manuscripts. A 450-page manuscript written in the 1500s. Yes, you heard me correctly, the 1500s, that's 1500. These CBU manuscripts contain diagrams and step-by-step instructions regarding artillery, ballistics, multi-stage rockets, meaning 2- and 3-stage rockets. You know, where the rocket separates into multiple pieces as it breaks through Earth's atmosphere? Yeah, it's talking about that. As well as manned rockets, liquid fuel, along with their complex construction instructions. Not only that, I know, how can there be more? Apparently in the 1500s, one of these rockets was even successfully tested. This is just beyond comprehension. The Mandela Effect, time travel, or just lost history being rediscovered, whatever you want to call it, it's absolutely mind-blowing, and it raises so many questions. Let's talk about the 1979 James Bond movie Moonraker. This Mandela Effect is an old one, and one I've never covered on this channel before, but I'm talking about it today because some interesting new residue was found. This Mandela Effect has to do with a character named Dolly having braces. You see, Dolly rescues Jaws after his cable car crash, and they have the whole love at first sight. Jaws smiles at her, and then Dolly smiles back at him. And this is where the Mandela Effect comes in. So many people seem to remember Dolly having braces, and that's what causes the initial connection between the two. Both of them having a mouthful of metal, but apparently she's never actually had braces. Ever. In any version of this movie. So here comes the update. When this movie first released, the Los Angeles Times put out a review that day mentioning, "It would be a relationship made in heaven if only she wore braces." Now this is pretty interesting to me because it refutes the idea that Dolly actually had braces in the movie, but it also kind of plants the idea that maybe she does, or did, or should. It's really weird, right? But then 11 days later, the Journal-Gazette, an Illinois-based newspaper, said the exact opposite in its review of Moonraker. It said, "He meets this waif of a girl and gives her his aluminum smile and she smiles back. And call her braces galore. She has about as much hardware in her mouth as he does. Of such simple pleasures is love born." Now that is a totally different version of the Moonraker movie we have today. This review claims that Dolly does have braces, and a lot of them, that they are a match made in heaven. Maybe it's just me that finds this contradiction mind-blowing, but I personally think this is such an amazing piece of residue. Why does one review say she doesn't have braces but should, and the other one says that she does, and it's a lot? Talk about conflicting reviews. If you've seen this movie, what do you remember? My plan for 2024, I'm going to make even more brand new Mandela Effect videos, as well as cover a ton of new and interesting topics. New ideas, classics returning, so much great stuff is planned, so get ready for it. As always, I'm the only person running this channel, so every view, like, subscription, and Patreon supporter helps. I greatly appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a great new year. I'll see you in 2024. Until next time, never stop searching.